don't have a book, we have some at the top of the class here, and we also have some Bibles. Um, if you would like to own a book and take one, I would actually prefer you take these with the staple. But if you don't think you're gonna remember to bring it every week, better to leave it here because we'll remember to bring it every week. So just as a heads up for that. Okay, let's look at Eli and Samuel. We're in 1 Samuel chapter 1. Somebody read for us 1 Samuel 1, verses 1 through 9, and somebody read 10 through 18. 1 through 9 and 10 through 18.
18?
Yes, 1 through 9 and then 10 through 18.
Now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of Mount Ephraim. His name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroboam. Two sons of Eli also praised the Lord with him. And when the time was that Elkanah offered, he gave to Peninnah his wife all her sons and daughters, and her daughters portion. But unto Hannah he gave a worthy portion. For he loved Hannah, and the Lord had shut up her womb. And her adversary also provoked her sore, for to make her fret, because the Lord had shut up her womb. As he did so year by year, when she went up to the house of the Lord, so she provoked her. Therefore he wept and did not hear. Then said Elkanah, her husband, to her, why eatest thou? Why eatest thou not? Why is thy heart grieved? Am not I better to thee than 10 sons? Hannah rose up after they had eaten in Shiloh, after they had drunk. Now Eli the priest sat upon the seat by a post of the temple of the Lord.
And she was indigenous of soul, and prayed unto the Lord, and wept sore. And she vowed a vow, and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thine handmaid, and remember me, and not forget thine handmaid, but will give unto thine handmaid and my child, then I will give him unto the Lord all the days of his life, and there shall no razor come upon his head. And it came to pass, as she continued praying before the Lord, that Eli marked her mouth. Now Hannah, she spoke in her heart, only her lips moved, but her voice was not heard. Therefore Eli thought she had been drunken. Is that the 13? Or 18, okay. And Eli said unto her, how wilt thou be drunken? Put away thy wine from thee. And Hannah answered and said, No, my lord, I am a woman of a sorrowful spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, and have poured out my soul before the Lord. Count not thy handmaid for a daughter of Belial, for out of the abundance of my complained grief have I spoken hitherto. Then Eli answered and said, Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant thee thy petition that thou hast asked of him. And she said, Let thy handmaid find grace in thy sight. So the woman went her way and did eat, and her countenance was no more sad.
All right, let's see what we have here. This is a great story, one of my favorite stories in the Old Testament. So let's kind of dissect this. First of all, character-wise, let's kind of go through these names. Who's Hannah? Okay, and how many wives did he have? Two, okay. Hannah, I forget the name for it from an English language, but it's when a word can be spelled both ways. I forget the way to say it, but her name can be spelled backwards and forwards the same way. Yeah, there you go. So easy to remember. Okay, so he had two wives. One was Hannah. The other's name was what? Okay, and then were they both barren without children? Only one. Okay, so you can only imagine the strife that potentially could have caused in the home. Okay, so then walk us through just these first 18 verses, just a very quick recap. Now that we have like the character players in the story, what's basically going on here?
So Penina was laughing at Hannah because she couldn't have children, so she was on her. And Hannah decided not to eat because she was so upset that she cannot get pregnant.
Okay.
So she was praying to God, but she was praying silently. And Eli was watching her, moving her mouth and not saying anything. So he thought she was drunk. So he spoke to her, and he actually gave her some peace of mind. So she was able to eat, and she was happy knowing that whatever's gonna happen is gonna happen. So God will take care of it.
Okay, good. And then when he seen this Elkanah, right? And he seen Hannah, how much portion did he give her? Double, right? Why? Okay, so this is what we talked about this a couple of times already, but from a man's point of view is if a man loves a woman, it don't matter what everyone else thinks. Everyone else can say she's fat, she's ugly, she's this, she that. Will he care? No, he's not gonna care. He don't care what his mama say, what his auntie say, what his grandma say, what society say. So he loved this woman, so he gave her a double portion. In verse 6, which we just summarized, her rival also provoked her severely to make her miserable because the Lord had closed her womb. Okay, good. Okay, what else? What else happened basically from 10 to 18? Because there's
She found that if God gave her a child, she would give the child back to God, and that if she would not cut his head ever, give spirit ever.
Okay. And kind of where did we hear that already about cutting the hair? Okay, so she made this thing that she made a promise was a what? Starts with a V. A vow. Okay, so we'll get into this in a second. How important this is. Okay, so she made a vow, if God bless her with a kid, that she won't cut his hair and she would basically give him to the Lord. Okay, then what happened? Who was watching her after she made this vow? Eli. Okay, so now we get to the next character in this story. Who's Eli? Priest. Okay, so now we see this. And then Eli thought that she was praying or that maybe she was drinking something. A little bit drunken, right? So, okay, next up we have Hannah saying what? Hey, I am drunk. Sorry about that, or what? No, crazy, I'm not drunk, right? I'm a sorrowful or scorned woman, right? Okay, and then close this out, 16 through 18. What do we get? What did Eli say? Oh, okay, so here we have a promise from the priest. Go in peace, and the God of Israel grant your petition which you have asked. And verse 18, let your maidservant find favor in your sight, so that the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. Good. All right, let's close this out, 19 through 28. Someone read that for us.
Tired family got up early the next morning and went to worship the Lord. Then they returned home to Ramah. When Elkanah slept with Hannah, the Lord remembered her. This time she gave birth to a son. She named him Stanley, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. The next year, Elkanah and his family went to their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord to keep his vow, but Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and meet him there with the Lord permanently.
To 28.
28. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now, and may the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. When the child was weaned, Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought him along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice in a basket of flour and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the very woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. They will worship the Lord there.
All right, great. Now let's go through these questions here. Let's turn to 1 Chronicles chapter 6. 1 Chronicles chapter 6. And the very first question is, even though in a civil sense he was an Ephraimite in verse 1, now there was a certain man of Ramathaim Zophim of the mountains of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elud, the son of Toha, the son of Zeph, an Ephraimite, right? That's verse 1 of Samuel. our text says, of what tribe was Elkanah and his son Samuel by birth and descendant? So let's go to First Chronicles chapter 6. Couple of hard names here, but if you get tripped up, just make up something. Read 16 through 30. First Chronicles 6, 16 through 30. We're going to start at Levi, and we're going to go all the way down. Now, remember, Ruth, we did this for Judah. Remember last week we looked at Matthew, and we also looked at the verses in Ruth to look at the line of Judah. So now we're going to look at Levi. So someone start 16 through 30.
The sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. These are the names of the sons of Gershon: Libni and Shimei. The sons of Kohath were Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. The sons of Merari were Mahali and Mushi, and these are the families of the Levites according to their fathers' households. Of Gershon, Libni his son, Jahath his son, Zimha his son, Joha his son, Ido his son, Zerah his son, Shehathrai his son. The sons of Kohath were Aminadab his son, Korah his son, Asher his son, Elkanah his son, Ebiasaph his son, and Asir his son. Pahath his son, Uriel his son, Uzziah his son, and Shahal his son. The sons of Elkanah were Amasi and Ahimoth. As for Elkanah, the sons of Elkanah were Zophai his son, and Nathan his son, Eliab his son, Jeroham his son, Elkanah his son. The sons of Samuel were Joel, the firstborn, and Abijah the second. The sons of Merari were Mahila, Libnah his son, Shemaiah his son, Uzzah his son, Shemaiah his son, Haggai his son, Asaiah his son.
All right, great. Now we're going to get to the list of men that by the time we get to David's reign, David assigned these to be over the song service of the temple. So let someone read just verses 33 through 35.
These are the ones who ministered with their sons. Of the sons of Kohathites were Herman the singer, the son of Joel, the son of Samuel, the son of Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Eliel, and the son of Tor. The sons of Zub, the sons of Elkanah, the sons of Mahath, and the son of Amasah.
All right, so now we see that Samuel's lineage goes on to do what when David is king? Be singers, right? So they have an important role in the temple. And then Samuel and his dad is the lineage of Levi, right? We already started that from going through Chronicles. So this is important to see because when his mom gives him to Eli, you guys told me Eli's profession was a what? A priest. So is it far-fetched that Samuel would be giving to the priest to basically be with him all the days of his life? Is that far-fetched? Is that a weird job description based on the fact that his lineage is from Levi? Why? Because Levi's are what? That's their lineage anyway. So now we see some weaving together, right? We see some weaving together because all the way back with Moses and Moses and Aaron, the concept of the priesthood will come from the Levi tribe. So we see here that something kind of seems weird, like God is drafting in, really, with the Samuel in this, but we kind of see that it's not really weird at all. It was just a matter of God putting these things together that were already together because Samuel's lineage was already coming from Levi. So that's just an interesting tidbit to see from this first question. The second one is describe Elkanah's family. How is the passage demonstration of evil consequences of polygamy? Let's go back to Samuel, right? We're done with the Chronicles aspect. Now, just from this verses, basically 1 through 3 of 1 Samuel 1, describe his family and how is the passage a demonstration of the evil consequences of polygamy? What's polygamy? Okay, so how is these couple of verses here speaking against that? Kind of explain explain his family structure. We already talked about he had 2 wives, and now what's the feedback we feel like from his family? What do you think? What can you gather from these couple of verses? Okay, animosity.
You could tell it was constant competition between the 2 women.
Okay.
For his attention, especially when it comes to heritage and what they're going to get after all of this.
Okay.
You can tell what's going to happen in terms of who gets what. And for Hannah, if she doesn't have a son, usually everything goes to the son.
Right.
She's not going to have anything at all.
Okay, so for their culture to be make such a big deal about lineage and about inheritance, right? We've already seen this with what 2 famous twins, the story of inheritance you learned in Sunday school, we learned long time ago. Right? So we already seen how this is a big deal with twins from the same mom. Then what all the way back, take me all the way back to Abraham, how we had 2 boys and one was really the firstborn, but he was the half brother, and then the other, before we even get to Esau and his brother, what 2 people before? Ishmael, and what was his brother's name? So now we see from that lineage the issues there, right? So for any culture in the world to not practice polygamy, it probably would be the Israelites, because they already know how much of a big deal that they themselves make on lineage and heritage, right? They already make a big deal about that. Even ourselves, just getting from Genesis to Samuel, have seen these things come to a boiling head more than once, right? So this is a big deal. So for them to do this, and now you're talking about splitting up assets and family structure and who will take over as the patriarch of the family when the father passes and all these things, we can just surmise, even if we didn't know the story of this Samuel chapter 1, we can already see from past stories that this is probably not a good idea at all, if for any other reason, for their culture and their religious beliefs, right? Okay, anybody else? Question 2, anything else to speak of about this polygamy thing? Yes.
I just want folks to understand that God didn't condone multiple marriages. So just don't think because he was using these individuals that God gave his stamp of approval. They suffered tremendously by going against one wife, one husband. It caused a mess, but God was still trying to get a pathway for Jesus to get to the cross. And like the psalmist say, our lives are hard pressed. So God only got human beings to work with. So as these characters became patriarchs and matriarchs, remember the champion part of the story is what a reader is reading. As these people were living their lives, God was, as you say, weaving things together for his divine purpose. They didn't see themselves as that. Remember, Abraham didn't see himself as the father of many nations. That was told to him because of his faith in God. So these characters didn't see themselves. Rahab didn't see herself as being a part of that lineage because she was in it. She didn't foresee it coming. So I just want folks to understand, because we can get in. The church has gotten into this argument about, because in other cultures we still have multiple marriages.
Right.
In other countries we still have multiple marriages. Always say, what do you do about that? Well, you tell them don't get married, don't marry another. You know what I'm saying? So let's understand that, and don't think that God is the one that condone that kind of behavior, because men can start tripping on this real quick.
Right. Now, I just came from Utah. So before we even get to another country, Utah and your state, in your United States, all 50 states, polygamy is illegal, but in Utah, they still practice polygamy under what Christian denomination? What Christian denomination still practice? Mormons. Right? And that's in Utah. Now, when Utah was deciding to be a state, the government said in order to be a state, one of the things is y'all got to stop with this polygamy nonsense. So the elders of Mormon church said, okay, because they were also social leaders and political leaders. But there was a sect of Mormonism that said, no, we didn't agree to that. They agreed to that. So therefore, there's a city in Utah, Colorado City, where they still practice polygamy. Now, the thing that's interesting about United States is people will stop you for a tail light. people will stop you for selling a loose cigarette in front of a gas station. But how can I in Bridgeport, Connecticut know that people practicing polygamy in Colorado City, Utah, and those people not arrested yet? Very confusing to me. Right? Because if I know that, I was just passing through. That's common knowledge there. Now, some of these people are in political positions of power that are Mormons. Governors and mayors and senators and House of Representatives of today. So now if you go outside of the United States, you go to different parts of the world, and you have other religious beliefs and cultures that practice polygamy. But even in your nifty 50 United States, there is a state that turns a blind eye to this in modern times. So I just wanted to point that out. Yes, Sister Karen.
Yeah, also we talk about that everything in the Bible had a purpose. There was a reason. So think about lineage. Abraham's seed was going to be blessed. So it was very important that the family stayed within Abraham's seed, right? Because Jesus is going to come from that and all of that. So we all know that. That's not practical today. Mm-hmm. So if you think about it, polygamy, if one of the purposes also was if one person was barren, the lineage would continue. We would have male sons.
Right.
Right? Because remember, females were not that important in those days, right? So every man needed a son to continue the lineage. Right? So that was very, very important. So when you think about it, that was critical at that time.
Right. So let's go back to Genesis, because that's a good point so we don't forget. This whole concept of lineage inheritance to the Israelites was a big deal because Genesis chapter 3, God made a promise that through Adam or through Eve, he would fix it. He was speaking specifically to who? Because he wasn't speaking to both of them. He was speaking to who? Adam or Eve, that he would fix sin. Nope. Can Adam give birth? Eve. See, that's why the men like to make a big deal. But he was talking to Eve and said, through who? Her seed. Because did Jesus need Joseph? No, he needed Joseph to get him up to the point of manhood. But did God need Joseph with Mary when they conceived? No. God said that was me, Holy Spirit, Jesus, and Mary. We told you later. You was about to run. So this concept was a big deal about the seed being the Messiah. Now, once we get into people not being able to have kids, this is where human beings rationalize things, because they're going to say, like Sister Karen said, oh, we know that lineage goes through the firstborn, and we know that this seed is going to come through this Messiah. Somehow we don't understand fully is going to come through woman and man's connection. We don't know how. So since I picked the barren wife, it's up to me to help God out to get another wife so that maybe my second wife will be barren. What other two characters had that same kind of logic before? They was going to help God out because God looked like he was taking too long with having a kid. Oh, Abraham and Sarah, right? Like maybe God meant not with Sarah, maybe he just meant with Abraham. So therefore, he slept with his maidservant, right? So now we see this kind of thing happening in humanity. People do the same thing today, right? People will justify what they're doing based off of one verse, one snapshot, one parable, one something of the Bible to say, like, this is what God meant in its totality. So therefore, this is what we're going to do. And this is how you have justification for having this concept of multiple wives. Then when you go into the law, right, and it was talking about last couple of weeks, we mentioned this, remember, with Boaz and the nearest of kin and all those situations, it was a matter of taking on your husband's wife, or sorry, your brother's wife. If the brother passed away, remember we looked all the way into Jesus's ministry where they tried to trap Jesus and said there were 7 brothers, all of them died, each one married the other brother's wife. In the resurrection, who will the wife belong to? You remember that was kind of those stories there, right? So we see how this sort of thing started to take fold from Genesis all the way to Jesus's day. They're doing something that they're justifying that they're not seeing as right or wrong, right? They're seeing it as this is their culture and living life, right? That's important for us to see. And when we look at this, we're just reading the historical reference of people's lives, right? So if somebody wrote down everything we did in 2018, there'll be a lot of highs spiritually and a lot of lows, right? So if somebody just wrote an autobiography, maybe 2018 be one sentence, one paragraph, one chapter of our whole life. That's what we have to always remember when we're looking at Old Testament references, right? Some of these people are good people, but they're making bad decisions. Some people are bad people, but just in the snapshot of a story, they're making a good decision, those sort of things. So just remember, we're on this high level of a historical reference in the everyday living that people are doing is much like modern times, right? There's no percent good, right? Jesus taught us that. But we look at people that do good in the world, whether it's socially, politically, financially, and even in a religious setting. But when we look at their life, those people also make bad decisions, right? Paul told us that all fall short and fall of God's glory, right? We all sin. But we understand that conceptually. So when we look at this from a family structure standpoint, this is a bad idea. It's a bad idea culturally. It's a bad idea socially. And for their religious culture, it's bad, right? There's not a lot of positive that's going to come from this. Now, God will use negative and turn into positive, right? Because Solomon, last week we talked about Solomon is the wisest man ever, and he was the product of a rape, right? So we know that God can do amazing things. He can take something from a nothing and make something great. But it doesn't change the fact that wrong is wrong and right is right. And when you talk about family structure, this is why I love this section, because some of us come from broken family structure, right? Modern family where the mom and the dad, they may be married at that time, they may be dating at that time, have other children that don't have the same mom and the same dad, and now they're half brothers and half sisters, right? This is modern, right? This is modern living. So when you have that, you may not be experiencing polygamy, or at least I hope not. There was a singer back in the day who they made a movie about that. He had about 4 or 5 wives and nobody knew it until he passed away. So there are things where you may not experience this from a polygamy standpoint, but you may experience this in your own family of half brothers and half sisters, and the tension that brings. Now, one area where that brings tension is if you have a half sister and they have the same mother but different fathers, because fathers and daughters have a connection, right? So then let's say one of the sister's father is in their life, but the other sister father not in their life. What will that cause between the two sisters? Animosity, right? Like you may be a product of that or know someone's family who is a structure of this, where this couple of passages here isn't so far-fetched. Hopefully this is something that we can grasp and understand and be like, I either know a family like Hannah's family, or I come from a family like Hannah's family, and I can tell you these verses is just the highlight portion. It's not even getting into the everyday how bad this would be, right? Because she talking about she wasn't drunk, but she was what? Sorrowful to spirit, scorned, right? She was emotionally distraught and abused because of this relationship between her and her husband's other wife. So we can just surmise how big of a deal this is. So when we look at this, just want to bring out, right, the story. For those of us who know the story, Samuel, we're going to jump into that quickly, but just to bring out where Samuel came out of, right, his family structure of what that means in terms of us today. Yes.
And this is a great bridge to the story of Ruth. So we talked a little bit before about how Ruth would have been perceived by the women in the community. And so there's always like this hierarchy among women that's self-made, whether it's like, oh, my husband's the preacher, or my husband's the elder, you know, or oh, you're single, you don't really know that yet. And so this is a prime example of how there's tension often in community among women, and how God legitimately has to intervene, because without his intervention, people are driven to sadness and depression. And we don't really want to admit that a lot of the people's sadness in church comes from people in church. You know what I mean? And that like often people are like just completely unaware that you can be happy and you can be blessed, but like when you position your blessing to hurt someone else that may not have that thing, that's when it's harmful.
You know, like if you get a new car, I'm super excited for you. But if you constantly like dangling the key in my face, like, oh girl, you're never gonna drive this, that's something different, you know. And I think that I've always sympathized with Hannah because I know what it's like to have women in the church legit hurt my feelings and not be sorry about it. You know, and God is so good and He's so gracious and He's so forgiving. And Hannah had to be touched by God to like exist in that space and not be bitter. You know how hard that is to like be the person of someone else's hurt and not really be as mean to them as they are to you. So I just love this story because it's exactly what God does not want for women. And so when we think about the women who we've read about and studied from Genesis till now, we see different variations of female relationships and the ways in which God works through them.
Right, and it's not the first time that God had to intervene for a woman that was being casted out socially or emotionally. Because remember, we talked about Ishmael's mom with Hagar, right? Like, remember, God had to make a way for them. Remember, they kicked them out, right? And an angel had to prepare and kind of soothe them and make a way for them. Like, don't worry, God will look out for you. So that's a good point. Yes, Sister Nadine.
So I was really interested in Elkanah, the husband's point of view, right? So here he's saying, see his wife grieved. And he's saying, hey, am I not better than 10 sons? And to me, it reminds me of how clueless men can be in relationships. Because here he is. He was the one who created this situation, right? Hannah was most likely the first wife. She was named first in this group. She was most likely the first wife. And maybe because she didn't have kids, he had a second, or I don't know. But she was most likely the first wife. Here she was going through stress in the regular day-to-day because she wasn't just laughing. The second wife was just laughing. He said she was provoked. And the husband didn't even notice, or maybe he noticed and did nothing about it. And the other thing is, he promoted this strife by giving Hannah double portion and showing favoritism to her, which most likely made the other woman provoke her and torment her even more. You know, so here he may have meant well. He loved her, wanted her to realize that she was loved by doing all these things, but he was really the one who created this situation and put this woman in this position. You know?
Yeah, they definitely agree, right? Like most of the time when we look at these situations, especially from religious men or spiritual men, right? Sometimes they can do great from the outside, but not from the inside. Right? Like you got to worry about, that's why I say all the time is men should be worrying about their last name. If you was worrying about your last name or your pew or your row, you would be so busy, you never would notice what I'm doing. Never, because you'd be worrying about getting your wife and your kids situated spiritually. But see, these things come from perspective and culture. This is why I say is that men need to break how they were raised in their view and be more like Jesus. But men have to be willing to give up their machismo. Some of us feel like how we were raised is the best culture in the world. But again, we're in church culture. So you need to be mindful of situations, especially situations you created, right? So if you create this bad situation, the last response you should give as a husband who's married to 2 women that you made the situation is, aren't I better than 10 sons, right? That's like taking a fire and be like, oh, I heard liquid puts fire out. Let me take gasoline or kerosene and dump it. Maybe that'll make the fire go away, right? Then let me give double portion to Hannah because she's feeling so sad. Let me give her twice as much. That way it'll make everything equal. See? So when we see these things as relationships, sometimes we may have good intentions, but because we can't zoom out and see things from someone else's point of view, we make bad actions or we have bad conversational pieces, right? That's why in relationships, you got to see things from the other person's point of view, right? That's why I say when you're apologizing to somebody, never say, oh, sorry if that made you upset. Literally, that burns me up because you know what that means? Now I'm stupid. Now I'm weak because if I was stronger, that wouldn't have made me upset, right? Isn't that what somebody means? Don't say that to me. Apologize for being wrong. Oh, I don't feel like I was wrong. Then don't apologize. But don't tell me, oh, sorry if that made you upset. Or people say, oh, you need tougher skin. Or those sort of responses when you mad make you turn you from mad to angry. Or some cultures say what? Vexed. That's when you be like, oh, you know what? It's better if we have physical distance because this is going to escalate. That's how relationships can be. Because to circle back to Erica's point, the people that break your heart the most are the people that love you. This week going to be Thanksgiving. There's going to be more people upset on Thanksgiving because of people with the same DNA than people in the world. Because family is annoying. And the problem is family, the members who are annoying, they never admit and say, hey, sorry for being annoying the last 300 Thanksgiving. So that makes it even more annoying. So when we look at this, yes, I definitely would encourage the men to look inside in this story. To be like, how are you viewing your bad mistakes? Because some of us as men make bad mistakes that the family is reaping the negative from. Do you go back to your wife and say, hey, sorry, that was a bad financial move. I took us down the path 5-10 years. Sorry about that, right? She knows it was a bad move, but it's better to say, hey, sorry for that. Sorry for making spiritual bad decisions. Sorry for making physical bad decisions. Sorry for not acknowledging your emotions, your feelings, right? These are the things that people need to be doing more so in their relationship so that will bleed out into the congregation and people will see that and be like, oh, that's how you're supposed to be a husband. That's how you're supposed to be a father. But this is something that men don't like to talk about much because men, if it's positive, it was their idea. And if it's a negative in the family, they don't know where it came from. The devil got into my family, right? They don't like to admit so much that, hey, I did wrong. And this is the ramifications of these actions. So I agree with that, is to look into, because again, we may come from family structure like this, right? This is physical things too, right? Not just spiritual things, right? You may come from broken families for a variety of reasons. But it's better to, as the saying is, man up and own your responsibility, right? So I agree 100%, yes.
My grandfather used to teach us that if you make a mess, control the mess. And to Nadine's point, our fathers don't teach us how to fix an environment that we create. From the beginning of time, 2 women has never been a good idea. Never. It is more difficult enough in a very nice way, because I gotta be very cautious about what I say now. One woman. Adam had his hands full with Eve. That was clear. To bring another Edith into Eve and Adam, that is a disaster. And Elkanah didn't handle it. And just like most men do, and we've been taught to do this, gifts are affection. So I'm going to give you something to calm you down, to please you. He couldn't give her what she needed internally. She was emotionally distraught. He allowed his second wife to run off at the mouth, which he should have told her or put her in another tent or something. Be quiet. I can't come home to this, because this man had a horrible home environment. When he came home, and don't think for 1 minute she just went up to the priest talking about she can't have no kids. She went up there crying her heart out. This man came home to fighting every single night. And if he allowed that, and scripture showed that he allowed that second wife to go off like that, he didn't sleep at night. So he couldn't control what he did, and he should have controlled what he did. He was the one that made the mess.
Sadly. Yeah, good point. Right? We gotta own up to our responsibilities and do things that are more conducive to how Jesus would react for modern day application. Right? Like when you mess up, say you messed up and try to fix it. And when you try to fix it, don't try to have everyone in the house look at it from your point of view, right? Let's look at it from someone else's point of view. I always feel like if you messed up, you have no right to talk about your point of view because you messed up. Your point of view is the least. We looking at this from everyone in the house point of view, but yours. And men struggle with that because men make bad decisions all the time and don't want to own up to be like, wow, that was a bad decision. Let me do what's best for my family. But again, that's cultural and how you was raised. I always say that, but that is, I'm telling you, because how other people be talking about how they were raised in their culture, I don't understand that. Because to me, always how I view things is the man is last, not first. Some of your cultures, the man is first. Me, the man eat last. I don't understand men eating first because men don't have to eat. Why you don't go get more chicken? See, but some of your cultures, the men eat first. But if the men eat first, what if it's not enough for women and kids? What do your culture do then? By the time you go out and get more food and come back, your wife or kid died from hunger. That's why I say is the man should eat last. Man should tell God, hey, if it was me or my family get to heaven, I'd rather go to hell and my wife and my kids go to heaven. But see, some people don't believe that because you may not be raised that way. But I always say if Jesus was married, you think he would eat first or last? So that means if you were raised from a culture where you eat first, you should break that culture in your house and you should be trained to think of others more than yourself. See, but when we look at things the wrong way, it's hard to put things into practice. Then we pick and choose verses and say, oh, this justifies the way I act in my home. No. So when we look at this thing from a physical transition into a spiritual space is you have to be mindful. That's why I say all the time is when we look at things from 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians where God said, hey, you guys are abusing how you do worship service. So now we're going to make a change. Men going to do this, women going to do that. The men to this day be like, yes, that was a punishment. Adam, you got to work until the ground. You got to be the provider. Men today be like, yes, that was a punishment. See, we too slow to even recognize the difference between blessings and punishment. Because when you're the head of your household, it all falls on you, positive or negative. See, so but we don't like to think of it that way. So that's a good point. Yes, Sister Karen.
Yes, what I was saying, what I was going to say. We're looking at this culture that's loveless, faithless. So think about it, the woman in that culture had only one purpose, to bear a child, to bear a son. So if you think about it from that, I mean, I'm surprised that he loved Hannah more, for whatever reason he loved Hannah more. But there's not usually a lot of love and emotions going on when it comes to bearing children, getting married, taking a wife, that kind of stuff, right? It's always about who can have the most children, who can have bear the son, that kind of stuff. So if you think about it from the other wife's perspective, I mean, she had the upper hand. You never think about it. She's the one with the child. So she should have been the favorite one, right? But she wasn't.
Favorite, yeah.
She should have been. But she wasn't because, I mean, she did her purpose as a woman, right? Anna wasn't able to fulfill her purpose as a woman. So if you think about it, I mean, she was mean and all that stuff, yes, but I can understand why she did what she did because she was supposed to be the favorite one. And she wasn't. Yeah,
because when you remember, people who are selfish, they justify being selfish. People who mean justify being mean. That's why I said family members who bring nothing to Thanksgiving and take everything. Never once in my whole life did I ever have a family member say, hey, sorry. I never. Maybe your family different. Family member who don't even bring in the foil, but they leave. There's no foil for no one else. They don't know how much a turkey costs, a ham costs, how much mashed potatoes cost, right? Because when you don't bring nothing, do you know how much things cost? No, you just eating a free meal. And family members like that, they got 2 or 3 Thanksgivings to go to, don't they? When it's time to do family things, what they tell you? Oh, I got somewhere else to go. I never have those family members say one Thanksgiving, you know what? Sorry for using y'all all these years. They always justify their actions, right? Oh, I'm double booked. My friend's parents passed. I got to help them. It's always some benevolent thing to make you feel better. So I agree, yes. From her point of view, people who are mean-spirited, selfish, all these sort of things, they always justify from their point of view. Even Hitler was justifying things from his point of view. But we got to look at things from the right way. in the wrong way. The other thing that's important to look at this as, it's a difference between how God viewed women from the beginning and how these biblical characters view women from the beginning. Because God didn't view women from the beginning as the sole purpose to only bear a child. Because God's point was talking to Eve, not Adam. That means God had a special relationship with women to say, through your seed. Adam, you should have been more like me, but you're not. So I'm going to talk to this woman through your seed, right? That's why when Mary had child, what was Mary thinking? Oh my goodness, I should get an abortion for society reasons. No. What was Joseph thinking? I should put Mary away quietly. What did God have to do? No, not going to do that, because you don't understand. So when we look at things from that point of view, God's view was for what? Paraded all the animals around Adam and said, let's see if he comes to the same realization that I came to, that everything but him have a two. Did he come to that? No, he named everything. Okay, so he don't get it. You need a partner. What's a partner? Partner, like you didn't see this whole creation. You didn't think of, hey man, I need something for me. Didn't think about that, did you? Okay, let me give you something. Wow, you're going to give a partner. Where's it going to come from? You. Oh, really? Okay. So when we look at God's point of view is that the two should become one. Now, mankind didn't view women that way. And when Jesus came on the scene, they definitely didn't view that women that way, which is why when Jesus was interacting with women, people would murmur and be like, what kind of teacher is he that he would let this kind of woman even talk to him, let alone touch him? Because that's how society had grew. But God didn't view it that way. So it's important to make that distinction between the two. Yes.
I also thought it was interesting that the Bible mentions in these few verses, not once, but a few times, that God had been the one who would close it.
Yes.
Right? So her barrenness was for a purpose. And quite often we're going through things and we don't see the purpose. And I think we've mentioned this verse quite a few times so far in this overview. But God does work together, all things for good.
Yes.
For those who love the Lord and are called
Yes.
according to his purpose. Because later on in the book, we're going to see that Hannah didn't have only that one child that she kept the vow.
Yep.
She kept the vow she made.
Yep.
But she didn't have only one child, but she had several sons and daughters later on, So she was blessed, but God did it for his own purpose.
Yes. Yeah, that's important to see. Even the way we look at life is different. That's why I pick up on word choice like that, right? Like it said that this concept of God giving life in the last Ruth and Boaz, right? This concept of God is the one who caused Hannah not to be able to have children is a big, big deal, right? Because God is the giver and the sustainer of life. And when you pass, the spirit of life go back to God in whom he gave, right? Life got to return back to God. That's why it's a difference. New Testament says between spirit and soul. Your spirit got to go back to the life source. Now your soul going to go wherever you decide. That's on you. But life spirit got to come back. Living spirit got to come back because God is the giver and the sustainer of life. So that's very, very important to see. And if we translate that into our struggles, whatever that may be at this day right here, physically, financially, emotionally, or spiritually, sometimes those struggles God are going to use for your glory and his, but in due time. So that's a good point. Yes, Erica, then we'll close.
I was gonna say that when Jesus said, "Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake," so like she was legitimately being persecuted for bearing her barrenness.
Yeah, right. Like if you think about it, is Jesus looked out and was talking to the poor in spirit, right? People who were downtrodden, who nobody fought for them, nobody championed for them. But how come Jesus had to do that? Because Jesus was talking to other Jewish people. How come the Pharisees didn't do it? How come the Sadducees didn't do it? The lawyers, the scribes. See? How come Eli had to build her spirits up? Is Eli Hannah's husband? Oh, okay. So I'm not married, but if I was married, nobody could be out here building my wife's spirit up. Who built your spirit up? Oh, I went to church and the brother hugged me and built my spirit. What was wrong with your spirit? That's why some of y'all act way too loose to me. Because I'll be like, what was wrong with your spirit when you left the house? Oh, it was, downtrodden. I went to church. And then what church you went to? Oh, the sermon was touched my spirit. Because see, I would be like, who touching your spirit? But Eli helped her. This other guy was what? Oh, ain't I better than 10? No, bro, you're not better than 10 sons. But see, again, how you raise your culture, how you run your family, some people lose. So they don't see any big deal. But God had to use someone else to strengthen her spirit up to be like, hey, as a interpretation of the New Testament verse that Nadine gave, ain't God gonna look out for you? Oh, wow. And she was what? Sad no more. And then we know God didn't bless her just with one child because she kept her vow. God blessed her with even more children. So that's good. Okay, next week we're going to go into the story that we're more familiar of, right? We started out just with the basic understanding of family and things like that. Next week we're going to get more into this relationship between Hannah and Samuel. So this week I encourage you to read. The concept is faith, knowing God answers prayer. Right? Faith, knowing God answers prayer. So when you read through 1 Samuel 1 through 3 this week, kind of go into that. All right, let's end in a word of prayer, and we'll transition into worship service. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and blessed day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to study a portion of your word, this concept of family, and knowing that you answer prayers through faith, having the faith to go to you, knowing that you already have the ability to answer prayers even before we utter or make a request to you. We pray that we can have the type of faith that Hannah has, that we know, dear God, that we don't know how, we don't know when, but we know that you will. We can approach thy throne room and our prayer room with that kind of concept. I believe we will be able to be strengthened and blessed. We pray that those of us who may be poor in spirit at this time, that you will strengthen us, renew us. We pray, dear Heavenly Father, that we will be able to put these things into practice. As we transition into worship service, be with those who are traveling without the loss or harm of any. And we pray that the worship service will be presented to you a sweet-smelling aroma to thy throne. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. If you want to return one of your books, if you think you're going to forget it, please return it now. If you took a Bible, return it. Thank you for all of our Bible readers and all of those who had comments. Much appreciated.